They called me a gold digger, a small-town nobody who got lucky. For 4 years, I endured their whispers, their cruel smiles, and their constant reminders that I didn't belong in their world of private jets and designer everything. But tonight, at their exclusive anniversary celebration, I'm about to show my husband's family exactly who they've been underestimating. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena, and I've been married to Marcus Ashford for 4 years now. Yes, that Marcus Ashford, the tech mogul whose innovations revolutionized online security and made him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. But here's what the tabloids don't tell you about marrying into extreme wealth. Money doesn't buy you acceptance, respect, or love from the family that already had it all before you arrived. I grew up in Millbrook, a farming community where everyone knew everyone, and your word was your bond. My father worked the apple orchards that had been in our family for 3 generations, while my mother taught elementary school in the same classroom for 30 years. We lived paycheck to paycheck, but our home was filled with laughter, homemade meals, and the kind of unconditional love that money can't purchase. After college, I became a social worker because I believed deeply in helping families navigate their toughest moments. It wasn't glamorous work, and it certainly wasn't lucrative, but every child I helped find a safe home, every family I guided through crisis, made every long day worthwhile. The Ashford family sees my background as a personal embarrassment they're forced to tolerate. To them, my small-town roots might as well be a scarlet letter branded across my forehead. They've never said it directly, of course. People with their level of sophistication don't stoop to obvious cruelty. Instead, they've perfected the art of elegant dismissal, turning condescension into a fine art form that would make diplomats weep with envy. Marcus and I met at a community center fundraiser, where he was making a substantial donation. I was there coordinating services for families in need, wearing my best dress from Target and genuinely excited about the programs his contribution would support. He stayed after the formal presentation, asking thoughtful questions about our work, listening intently as I explained how we helped children aging out of foster care find stability and support. We talked for hours about systemic poverty, educational inequity, and the power of giving people second chances. He didn't mention his net worth, his family's legacy, or the fact that his casual donation that night exceeded my annual salary. What began as coffee dates turned into long walks through the city, deep conversations about changing the world, and quiet moments where I fell in love with his genuine curiosity about life beyond boardrooms and stock reports. Marcus seemed to find peace in my uncomplicated perspective, in dinners that didn't require reservations months in advance, in conversations that didn't revolve around mergers and acquisitions. We were happy in ways that had nothing to do with his bank account, and everything to do with discovering we wanted the same things: meaningful work, authentic relationships, and the chance to make a positive impact on the world around us. But the moment I stepped into his world, I became the charity case, who somehow convinced their brilliant son to settle for less than he deserved. Every family gathering feels like a carefully orchestrated reminder of my inadequacy, a masterclass in making someone feel small without ever raising voices or losing composure. Marcus's mother, Catherine Ashford, has turned passive aggression into an Olympic sport. She never insults me directly. Instead, she delivers her disapproval wrapped in silk gloves and presented with the kind of smile that never reaches her eyes. At our wedding reception, she made sure to tell every guest how refreshing it was that Marcus chose someone so down-to-earth and unpretentious. The way she emphasized those words made them sound like character flaws rather than compliments. During our first Christmas together, she gave me a gift certificate to a local department store, explaining loudly to the family that she thought I'd be more comfortable shopping somewhere familiar rather than feeling overwhelmed by the boutiques the family usually frequents. Then there's Vivian, Marcus's sister, who treats me like her personal sociology experiment. Catherine and Vivian spent weeks debating venue selections, menu choices, and entertainment options while I sat quietly at family dinners, invisible and apparently irrelevant to an event celebrating the foundation I'm supposedly part of through marriage. Last month, I overheard Catherine on the phone with the event planner, expressing concerns about the guest list and family representation. "We need to be thoughtful about how we present ourselves," she said, her voice carrying through the marble hallway of their estate. "The Blackstone family will be there, along with the Sterlings and the entire foundation board. We simply cannot afford any Complications that might reflect poorly on our family's reputation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Vivian's response was swift and cutting. You mean Elena's presence might embarrass us in front of people who actually matter to our social standing and business relationships? There was no question in her voice, just matter-of-fact cruelty wrapped in practical concerns. I'm not saying she shouldn't attend, Catherine replied carefully, but perhaps we should provide some guidance about appropriate attire and behavior. We want everyone to feel confident and comfortable, especially Elena, who isn't accustomed to events of this magnitude and significance. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with both women discussing me like I was a problem requiring careful management rather than a member of their family deserving basic respect. They debated whether to arrange a shopping intervention to ensure I dressed appropriately, whether to seat me at a table far from the main donors and dignitaries, and how to minimize any potential embarrassment my presence might cause. When Marcus finally brought up the anniversary celebration at dinner, the tension was immediately palpable. The Foundation's anniversary gala is next month, he announced, looking between his mother and me with the careful expression he wore whenever family dynamics threatened to explode. Elena, we'll need to coordinate your schedule since it's on a Saturday evening. Catherine's fork paused halfway to her mouth, and I watched Vivian's smile transform into something sharp enough to cut glass. The implication was clear. My attendance wasn't assumed or welcomed. It was a complication they were still figuring out how to manage. Naturally, Elena will attend, Marcus continued, but his voice lacked the confidence of someone making a statement rather than seeking approval. It's a family celebration, and she's part of this family. Of course she'll be there, Catherine replied, her tone suggesting anything but enthusiasm. Though we should probably discuss the details privately, just to ensure everyone feels prepared for such a significant event. Vivian nodded eagerly, already planning what I knew would be a humiliating intervention designed to transform me into their acceptable version of a billionaire's wife. The guest list is quite impressive this year, she added meaningfully. People who've known our family for generations, major foundation donors, political figures. Everyone will be watching how we present ourselves. I sat there listening to them discuss my presence like it was a crisis requiring careful management, feeling Marcus's guilty glances and registering his family's barely concealed dread. Finally, I spoke up using the same soft voice I'd cultivated over 4 years of these performances. I'm honored to be included in such an important family celebration, I said simply, meeting Catherine's eyes directly. Thank you for thinking of me. What they heard was gratitude and submission, acknowledgement that I understood my place in their hierarchy and would behave accordingly. What I felt was something entirely different. A calm certainty that this anniversary gala would become a night none of them would ever forget, though not for the reasons they expected. As we finished dinner that evening, I excused myself early and went to my home office, where I began making phone calls that would set in motion events beyond their comprehension. 20 years of the Ashford Foundation's work was indeed worth celebrating, but perhaps not in the way Catherine and Vivian imagined. The next few weeks passed in a blur of their careful planning and my quiet preparation. I watched them orchestrate every detail of their perfect evening while I arranged details of my own, details that would transform their celebration of family legacy into something far more memorable and infinitely more honest than anything they had planned. The morning of the anniversary gala, I woke before dawn with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. While Marcus slept peacefully beside me, I moved quietly through our home, preparing for what would become the most important evening of our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me that after 4 years of being made to feel invisible, tonight I would ensure that everyone in that ballroom would see me clearly for the first time. I spent hours getting ready, but not in the way Catherine and Vivian expected. There would be no last-minute shopping intervention, no desperate attempt to transform me into their version of acceptable. Instead, I chose a deep emerald dress that was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without screaming for attention. My jewelry consisted of simple pieces that appeared understated but carried stories Catherine's family would never understand. I did my own hair and makeup, keeping everything natural and refined, because tonight wasn't about costume or performance. Tonight was about truth. When I looked in the mirror, I saw exactly what I intended. A woman who belonged in any room but didn't need external validation to prove it. This was who I had always been. The only difference was that tonight, I would finally let that truth be known. Marcus appeared in the doorway as I was putting on my earrings, and I caught his expression in the mirror reflection. "You look beautiful," he said, and I could hear both love and relief in his voice. The relief told me everything about how much pressure his family had put on him regarding my appearance tonight. The drive to the hotel was filled with comfortable silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts about what this evening represented. For Marcus, it was a celebration of his family's philanthropic legacy and their position in society's upper echelons. For me, it was something entirely different. The culmination of 4 years of careful observation and the beginning of long overdue accountability. We arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel, where the ballroom had been transformed into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white orchids and gold accents, while string quartet music provided an elegant soundtrack for the gathering elite. The city's most powerful people were already mingling, their designer gowns and perfectly tailored suits creating a sea of carefully curated sophistication. I watched Marcus's shoulders relax visibly as we entered the ballroom. His relief was palpable when heads didn't turn to stare at his inappropriately dressed wife, when whispers didn't follow in our wake about his embarrassing choice in companions. Catherine had succeeded in making him genuinely worried about my ability to present myself appropriately at his family's most important social event. Catherine spotted us immediately, her trained eye scanning me from head to toe like a security checkpoint evaluating potential threats. I saw the exact moment she decided I was acceptable enough not to cause immediate embarrassment to the family name. "Elena, dear," she said with manufactured warmth that fooled no one who knew her well. "How lovely you look tonight." Understated and appropriate, exactly right for the occasion. It was meant to be a compliment, but the emphasis on appropriate revealed everything about what she actually thought. I had finally learned my place well enough not to embarrass them in front of people who mattered to their social standing and business relationships. Vivian materialized beside us, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to begin her evening's entertainment. "Elena, you simply must meet some of our special guests tonight," she said, already guiding me toward a group of distinguished older couples. The Harrison family owns the largest private equity firm on the East Coast, and Margaret Harrison sits on the boards of 3 major cultural institutions. The introduction was carefully designed to emphasize the vast gulf between their world of influence and my small sphere of social work. Margaret Harrison approached with the confident smile of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "How wonderful that you work with families in need," she said with the particular tone wealthy women use when they're being charitable about someone else's humble circumstances. "It must be so fulfilling to help people in such simple, direct ways." Nothing like the complexity of managing major foundations or navigating significant policy initiatives. Her husband, Richard Harrison, joined the conversation with the casual authority of a man who'd never encountered a problem his money couldn't solve. "The work you do is admirable," he said, looking directly at me with patronizing kindness. "It takes a special type of person to find satisfaction in such modest achievements. Most people want to make a bigger impact, but there's real value in knowing your limitations and working within them." I smiled the same gentle smile I'd perfected over 4 years of these interactions, letting them lean in slightly to hear my soft response. "You're absolutely right about the importance of understanding your true capabilities," I said quietly. "Though I've found that people often make assumptions about others, limitations based on incomplete information." Something in my tone made Marcus glance over from his conversation with the foundation board members. But the Harrisons simply nodded approvingly, believing they'd finally heard me acknowledge my proper place in their hierarchy of importance and influence. The dinner portion of the evening unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. I was seated at table 8, strategically placed far from the main action but close enough to be visible as part of the family. My table mates included the foundation's financial advisor, a local journalist covering society events, and several donors who seemed uncomfortable with the obvious social maneuvering happening around them. The speeches began with Catherine taking the stage to discuss 20 years of the Ashford Foundation's impact on education, youth services, and community development. Her presentation was polished and impressive, highlighting millions in donations and thousands of lives touched by their charitable initiatives. Vivian followed with statistics about their scholarship programs and partnerships with local organizations. When Richard Harrison took the microphone to speak as the evening's keynote presenter, I knew the real performance was about to begin. He spoke eloquently about the responsibility that comes with wealth, the importance of strategic philanthropy, and the necessity of maintaining standards in charitable organizations. It's crucial that we remember, he said, his eyes scanning the room with practiced authority, that effective philanthropy requires more than good intentions. It demands expertise, connections, and the kind of institutional knowledge that comes from generations of involvement in meaningful change. Some people are naturally positioned to lead these efforts, while others serve best in supporting roles behind the scenes. The applause was enthusiastic, and I caught Catherine nodding approvingly, while Vivian practically glowed with satisfaction. Harrison continued, building toward his main point with the confidence of someone accustomed to having his opinions treated as universal truths. "There's tremendous honor in understanding your role and executing it with excellence," he declared, looking directly at our table. "Too many people today believe they deserve positions of influence they haven't earned. But true wisdom lies in appreciating the value of humility and recognizing where you can contribute most effectively." When he returned to his seat near mine, he couldn't resist delivering one final observation. "It's refreshing to see young people who understand these principles," he said directly to me, his voice carrying to neighboring tables. "So many of your generation think they deserve immediate recognition and impact, but you seem to appreciate the importance of patience and knowing your place." Vivian appeared beside us as if summoned by his words, her smile sharp with anticipation. "Elena has been wonderfully gracious about embracing her supporting role," she added with false warmth that made several people shift uncomfortably. "She never tries to overreach or pretend to expertise she doesn't possess. It's actually quite admirable how she's accepted her position in Marcus's life and our family's work." The journalist next to me looked increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation continued, clearly sensing the undercurrent of cruelty beneath their polite words. Other guests at nearby tables had begun to pay attention. Drawn by the obvious tension in what appeared to be a family discussion, set down my wineglass and looked directly at Richard Harrison, then at Vivian, then slowly around the table at the faces, watching our interaction with barely concealed anticipation. The moment had arrived, and I felt a calm settle over me that I hadn't experienced in years. "You're absolutely correct about the importance of understanding your true position," I said quietly, my voice carrying just far enough to reach the growing circle of attention around us. "In fact, I think it's time everyone here learned exactly what my position actually is." Conversations at surrounding tables began to quiet, as people sensed something significant shifting in the atmosphere. Marcus had stopped talking entirely, and was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, part concern and part curiosity, with something that might have been pride beginning to emerge. Catherine's smile had frozen in place, and Vivian looked like she'd suddenly tasted something unpleasant. The ballroom's background noise seemed to diminish as more people turned their attention toward our table, sensing that whatever was happening here was more interesting than their own conversations. "I want to thank all of you," I continued, standing slowly and addressing not just our table but the expanding circle of attention around us, "for providing me with such a comprehensive education over these past 4 years. You've shown me exactly how you treat people you believe are beneath you, what you truly value in relationships, and how you define worth and belonging. It's been incredibly enlightening." Richard Harrison's face shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion, then to something approaching concern. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at, young lady," he said, with the tone of someone accustomed to shutting down conversations that made him uncomfortable. "Oh, I think you understand perfectly," I replied, my voice gaining strength with each word. "You've spent this entire evening explaining to me how I should be grateful for my position, how I should know my place, how some people are meant to lead while others follow. You've made it abundantly clear that you see me as someone who married above her station and should spend her life thanking the Ashford family for their generosity." The ballroom was definitely quieter now, with more heads turning toward our table and conversations trailing off as people sensed something momentous happening. Catherine had gone pale, and Marcus was slowly making his way over, though whether to support me or attempt damage control I couldn't tell. "What you've failed to realize," I said, my smile becoming genuine for the first time all evening, "is that you've been making judgments based on assumptions rather than facts. You've evaluated me based on my job, my clothes, my quiet demeanor, and my humble background, but you never bothered to ask the most important question of all. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it became almost unbearable, watching as realization began to dawn on the faces around me that whatever came next would change everything about this evening. You never asked who I actually am beyond the surface details you found so easy to dismiss. The silence in the ballroom was now absolute, with even the waitstaff stopping their service as they sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Nathan had reached our table, his face showing a mixture of confusion and dawning awareness that his wife was about to reveal something that would reshape everything he thought he knew about our relationship. "My full name," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the now completely silent room, "is Elena Catherine Morrison Ashford. Morrison, as in the Morrison Family Foundation, established in 1892 and currently managing an endowment of over $8 billion in charitable assets." The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps echoed through the ballroom, champagne glasses froze halfway to lips, and I watched the color drain completely from Richard Harrison's face. The Morrison name was legendary in philanthropic circles, representing old money and older influence, a family whose charitable work had shaped education and social services across the country for over a century. "That's impossible," Vivian whispered, but her voice carried in the absolute silence. "The Morrisons are... You can't be..." She was struggling to reconcile the quiet social worker she'd been mocking with one of the most powerful families in American philanthropy. "My great-great-grandfather established our foundation to support education, child welfare, and community development," I continued, my voice steady and calm. "We've been quietly funding initiatives in these areas for over 130 years. The Morrison Foundation has provided major grants to organizations across the country, including substantial ongoing support for the Ashford Foundation's youth education programs." I let that information settle for a moment, watching Catherine's face cycle through disbelief, horror, and rapid calculation as she began to understand the implications of what I was revealing. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with hurt and amazement, "why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I needed to know if you could love Elena the social worker," I replied, looking directly at him with all the honesty our relationship had always deserved. "Not Elena the Morrison heiress. I'd watched too many relationships crumble under the weight of expectations and inheritance. I needed to know that what we had was real, that you valued me for who I am rather than what I represent." I turned back to address the crowd, which was hanging on every word with the kind of attention usually reserved for breaking news or natural disasters. I chose to work in social services because child welfare and family support have always been my passion, not because it was my only option. I chose to live simply because I wanted to find someone who would value my character over my bank account. Richard Harrison had found his voice again, though it sounded strained and uncertain. "Even if what you're saying is true, that doesn't change the fact that..." He struggled to find words that wouldn't make his position worse than it already was. "That I should have announced my family connections the moment I entered your social circle?" I interrupted, my patience finally exhausted after 4 years of accumulated insults and dismissals. "That I should have demanded respect based on my inheritance rather than earning it through my actions and character?" I looked around the room at faces that had shifted from smugness to panic, from condescension to genuine fear about what this revelation meant for their own relationships and social standing. "You're absolutely right that it doesn't change anything," I continued. "It doesn't change how you've treated me, what you've revealed about yourselves, or the decisions I'm going to make because of your behavior." I reached into my small evening purse and pulled out my phone, making a call that connected immediately on the first ring. "Hello, James." "Yes, it's Elena. I need you to prepare documentation first thing Monday morning for the immediate withdrawal of all Morrison Foundation support from organizations that have demonstrated values inconsistent with our mission of dignity and respect for all people." The collective gasp that went through the room was audible, like air being sucked out of the ballroom itself. I could see people frantically trying to calculate what this meant for their own charitable organizations and social positions. "We'll be redirecting those funds to establish new partnerships with organizations that demonstrate genuine commitment to treating all people with dignity, regardless of their background or social status." I continued into the phone while maintaining eye contact with Catherine and Vivian. When I ended the call, Catherine had finally found her voice, though it sounded nothing like her usual composed authority. "Elena, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We never intended." "No misunderstanding at all," I said calmly, cutting off her desperate attempt at damage control. "For 4 years, you've shown me exactly what you think of people you consider beneath you. Tonight, You've demonstrated those values publicly and definitively. The Morrison family has always believed that character matters more than pedigree, and you've shown me everything I need to know about yours." The room was buzzing now with whispered conversations and shocked murmurs as people frantically tried to process this complete reversal of power dynamics and calculate what it meant for their own positions in this social ecosystem. Marcus stepped closer to me, and for the first time in 4 years, I saw him stand up completely straight in front of his family, his voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "Elena, I owe you an apology that's 4 years overdue. I should have defended you from the very beginning. I should have made it clear that anyone who disrespected my wife was disrespecting me and everything I claim to stand for." He turned to face his mother and sister directly, his voice stronger and more definitive than I'd ever heard it. "What happened here tonight is unacceptable and inexcusable. Elena has shown nothing but grace, patience, and genuine kindness to this family, and you've repaid that with cruelty, snobbery, and behavior that would be embarrassing in middle school, let alone in a room full of people who claim to care about making the world better." Catherine's carefully constructed mask had completely fallen away, revealing desperation beneath years of practiced superiority. "Marcus, you cannot possibly choose her over your own family. We raised you, we built everything you have, and she chose me when she could have had anyone." Marcus replied firmly, his words carrying to every corner of the now silent ballroom. "She loved me when she thought I was just another tech entrepreneur who cared about more than profit margins. Everything she's done with honesty, integrity, and a commitment to making people's lives better. Can any of you say the same?" The silence that followed was answer enough, but Vivian made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "This is all very dramatic, but surely we can work this out like civilized people. Perhaps Elena was just making a point and we can all—" "The point is made," I said quietly, but my voice carried clearly across the ballroom. "The question now is what everyone chooses to do with the information they've received tonight." I looked around the room one final time, meeting the eyes of people who had spent the evening judging me based on assumptions and prejudices. I hope some of you will use this as an opportunity to examine how you treat others, especially those you think can't fight back. I hope you'll remember how it felt to realize that your assumptions about someone's worth and power were completely wrong. Taking Marcus's arm, I began walking toward the exit, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes following our movement. The conversations that erupted behind us were immediate and intense, but I no longer cared what they were saying. 4 years of careful observation and patient endurance had led to this moment of perfect clarity. At the doorway, I turned back to address the room one final time. "I want to leave you with something my grandmother taught me when I was young," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom that had fallen silent again. "She used to say that real power isn't about making people feel small or using your advantages to diminish others. True power lies in lifting people up, in using whatever influence you have to create opportunity and hope for those who need it most." As we walked out into the cool night air, Marcus squeezed my hand tightly. "I can't believe you kept this secret for 4 years, he said, shaking his head in amazement, and what might have been admiration. "I can't believe it took your family 4 years to show me who they really were," I replied. "Though honestly, I knew from our first family dinner. I just wanted to be absolutely certain before I did anything that couldn't be undone." We walked to our car in comfortable silence, both of us processing what had just happened and what it meant for our future. Behind us, the gala continued, but I knew the conversations had completely changed. By tomorrow, the story would be all over the city's social circles, the Ashford Foundation would face serious questions about their values and leadership, and people would be reassessing every interaction they'd ever had with someone they considered beneath them. As Marcus drove us home, I felt lighter than I had in years, not because I'd revealed my secret or gotten revenge on people who'd treated me poorly, but because I'd finally shown both my husband and myself that I was strong enough to stand up for who I was and what I believed in, regardless of the consequences. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room really is the most powerful. They just choose very carefully when to let that power show. And tonight had been exactly the right time to remind everyone that true strength comes not from inherited position or social status, but from character, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right when it matters most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.